Hi, this is Siofra Bradigan, and this is Siofra's Magic Alcove. So I thought I would share some of the statues that I have picked up over the years and repurposed, repainted, or refreshed, or whatever you want to call it, and show you some of the things that you can think of. This is actually a not very expensive carving, a duplicate replica of a piece called the Veiled Madonna. I just saw it as a veiled female figure, and it isn't colored. It isn't painted when you get it. It's all stone, and so you don't see features or anything. And one day I suddenly had this inspiration that I wanted to be able to see her under the veil and still keep that feeling of a veil with her. So I painted her, and I used some sparkly kind of paint on the top of the paint job that I did to represent the veil itself, and then all the stuff underneath, so that you can see that this way she has a little bit more personality than just the original. And I just wanted to fancy her up. And I like doing this kind of stuff with statues because it allows me to personalize them when I'm painting them. I'm thinking about the symbolism. She represents the maiden to me, not necessarily the Virgin Mary, although the Virgin Mary would be a representation of the maiden in the maiden mother crone kind of way of looking at things. And I think she was less than $20 for me to buy at Goodwill. A lot of things are less than that, but so here's what I did with her. And she sits in my bedroom. I have a corner hutch that has some of my larger pieces in it, and she sits right at the top, so she's overlooking everything in my room, which I kind of like. So this is decorating your house as a witch on a budget. All right, so on here's her. So this is an example of another piece I'm working on. It cost me $7 to buy this Greek woman kind of thing, and I decided to turn her into a representation of Athena. She's not finished yet. She's got sort of that Roman nose sort of thing, so I guess she could be the Minerva, if that's what you thought, or some other figure similar to that. But I haven't done all of the shading and that kind of thing that I tend to do for hair, and the facial features and so forth. So she's still sort of a work in a work in progress. Apparently she's been sitting around waiting for me to work on her and got some dust on her too. But she makes a nice statue. I kind of like her. She's a powerful female sort of figure, and yeah, so that's her. And the paints that I'm using basic acrylics. I'm not using expensive paints. These are paints that I can pick up at Walmart, or in some cases spend a little bit more money to get a somewhat fancier paint. Now then there's this angel. She's one of my more recent ones, and I've had her for a while. I like when I see angel statues if they have a nice face, and I really like her face. See if I can get a good picture of her face. The lighting is not quite right for some of those details. Yeah, can't really see the nice look on her face so much. But she's got flowers, and she's sort of dancing. She's got a bird, and with her I used some paint shifting paint, so it like goes from one color to another. So like her wings are this I think it's a blue shifting paint, and so it goes blue and purple. So depending on the light, it sort of gives it that kind of iridescent look. And there's a lot of goddesses that are reputed to have wings to start with. And I sort of decided that she was, although she's very spring in energy with her flowers and her bird and stuff like that, I've put her on the north altar to represent earth. So she's become my earth angel, I guess, or my earth goddess, or something like that. But again, it's like, I get to look at her face and put my energy into the piece I'm working on. So it's sort of being charged up as I go. And yeah, there's a couple of different stores in town that often have figurines of different kinds, and I'm always just on the lookout for something that I like the visage, the energy of the piece. So she's not a specific goddess. So that's her. And another Goodwill find that I have is this vase. This is like a Ross, the store Ross. It's one of their pieces. And, they show up sometimes at Goodwill, and they're not originally water soluble, or they don't hold water. They're water soluble is the wrong word, but not watertight, I guess. So if I'm going to use it to put things in, like this one and the one behind me that has the 3 cats, that's another one of those. That's a Ross's vase that we picked up at Goodwill. And you can put resin on the inside of it to make it watertight, so then you don't have to worry about it leaking all over the place, and you can check that fairly well. So this is the Maiden, Mother, and Crone, the picture of the 3 faces of the goddess. So this one is the Maiden. And when I have things like this, I really like the Egyptian coloration of the gold and turquoise or blue color and stuff. So I tend to gravitate towards that when I'm deciding what colors I'm going to paint. So you can see I put the spring goddess in green, or the maiden. I put the mother in blue. So, and she has different color hair. Every one of them's got slightly different hair. The maiden is blonde. The mother is brown, brunette. And then the crone is in somewhat darker colors. She's in sort of a dark aqua, and her hair is black. And so this is a piece that we keep on our Eastern altar as part of the, our main altar representing the triple goddess. We have other kinds of representations and stuff over there, but this is a nice way to get something inexpensively that looks wonderful when you're finished, and you're putting your own energy into making the piece, and so it becomes unique, one of a kind as you're working on it, and then that adds to whatever it is that you're doing. So you don't have to buy expensive pieces in order to have a wonderful looking altar. Doing crafty stuff is really helpful. Put this. So this was a new statue of Diana. I think of her as Artemis because I go more for the Greek end of things. Oh, this way, get a little bit more of her in there. I'll have to lift her up. And she was, just marble colored, I guess is what you call it. And I really decided that I wanted to paint her instead of just having her the white, undetailed kind of color. So I had to, think about what colors I wanted to use. So silver was clearly a color to use for this piece because of her association with the moon. And I actually found a wash I could put on the top of her that is sort of like it puts a silver shine, you know, that you can see through, so you still see all of her colors. And it was sort of interesting when I first started her, I had different colors and she didn't like them, so I had to repaint them. So get some of that off of his head there. So she's represented, of course, with her stag, which I painted with silver stag with golden horns to give him, or her, I guess him in this case, some contrast. And I painted her with darker hair rather than blonde hair. And she has um, her arrow quiver and stuff. And this thing in her hand represents her actual bow. It's sort of like a piece of the bow, so you imagine the bow there. They don't actually include the bow in the piece. And then on the bottom, there's a lot of plants and whatnot. So I wanted to make them look kind of like how things look in the moonlight in the dark. So blues and purples and that silver kind of color and stuff over top of them. So this is one that's in my bedroom as well. And she shines really nice in the moonlight, I can tell you. So that works out quite well for that. Apparently I need to dust all of my pieces. I get to see that when I look at them closer. It was tricky getting her sandals in because her sandals are quite, let's see, can you see those details? It's hard to see on just a video, but he has very detailed sandals, and I managed to get them in there pretty well and have the right color. And when you're doing something like this, it's never like one shot and done. It's like you get your basic colors on, and you start to figure out what you want. You always overflow into something else when you're doing it, and then you have to back that up. And each time I put a layer of paint on, I'm trying to get it more detailed, more accurate, get rid of the little, paint glitches that might be there that are around them. And if you really are completely satisfied with a piece, then you can spray it with a fixative afterwards, so you don't have to worry about it. But I'm pretty tickled with the way she turned out. Gave her some blue eyes too. And she sits on my main altar. I think I have a picture of my main altar on our page from my bedroom. I think I do anyway. But there's her. So when I was deciding how to get a representation of my patron goddess Aurora, she has some iolite on her that I'm going to make into a little necklace for her. And I wanted to put that there so I didn't lose them. She is definitely represented as winged, flying in Aurora and the dawn, or dawn. And so I had this angel statue for a number of years. It just sort of been sitting around my house unpainted. And I did some research and I looked up like exactly what her colors were supposed to be, and purple and saffron are the colors of her robe. And so that's what I did. I did that on purpose. So I made her dress the purple color, and then the fabric that she's holding is a saffron yellow. And so, and then with her wings, I wanted to represent the light, dawning light, so that it would represent that to me. And so I have it like the inside of the wings are the darker blue, and then they go out to the lighter blue, and then they go out to some pinks and purples, violets and stuff at the end, to get that energy of the sun rising and the changing in the color of the sky to represent that. And she's actually right next to my statue of Artemis. I haven't painted Aphrodite. I keep looking at her and thinking, but it doesn't feel the same way as painting these particular goddesses. And again, that's a personal choice. But I find a lot of my statues in secondhand stores and pay not that much money for them. Even my large statue of the Garuda, I think I paid less than $20 for it because I found it at the Salvation Army, and as a senior, I get 10% off. So it was like $18, I think. I think it was $20 originally. So I got to pay less. But again, it's like all the time and energy, the choices that you make to put into a piece of statuary to represent a deity, if that's what you're doing, that becomes kind of a component of whatever you're doing it with and for. And same thing with like if something breaks. Now it depends upon your attitude towards broken things, right? So if your belief is that if something is broken, it's finished, it's no longer good, then you throw it away. However, like the Japanese, I guess, their belief that just because something breaks doesn't mean that it's finished. And they have that very famous pottery that they have where they use gold to repair the cracks and turn it into something precious and unique. And I sort of feel similarly. Of course, I don't have liquid gold I can put on my statues, but we've had a number of times where something like that has happened. Our Buddha that we rescued, we needed a house for him, and I bought a Buddha statue from Ross's. One of the ones that's not with the big belly, but sort of the more svelte, high-topped head kind of lotus position kind of statue in a meditative pose. And it was the last one they had, and Ian took it out of our car in the bag and was going into the house and promptly dropped the bag on our concrete side step, and it broke in a couple of pieces. It didn't shatter, but it definitely broke, and he was very upset that he had broken this thing that we had just bought. And I'm like, no, don't worry about it. We can glue it back together, and now it'll be a one-of-a-kind item. There will be no other statue like it in the world, because even if someone else breaks their Buddha statue and puts it back together, it's going to be put back together different. It's going to break in a different way. And so that makes it unique. And that's what we needed. And the spirit that we were rescuing, the Buddha, that was in the head of the Buddha in the store, was in a broken statue to start with. So the symbolism seemed perfect, to me. I didn't have any problem with it at all. So we glued them back together and put some symbols on the statue to turn it into a worthy home for the Buddha presence. And the energy of that statue accepted it and went right into it without a problem. So the way you think about things is going to determine how things work for you. So if you believe that things have to be new and they can't be used to start with, that sort of leaves out an entire avenue of places you can go to get things. You can't go to Goodwill or Salvation Army or a church bazaar or flea market or anything like that. So you limit your options. If you embrace the idea that just because something is used, it doesn't mean that you can't use it, but you need to have them cleansed because you're worried about the energy that someone else might have left behind, then you can buy something like that, and then you can put it through a process of cleansing it and getting rid of any energy that's attached to it. And a simple method for cleansing energy from an object is to use the invoking or evoking pentagrams, because you don't want to banish the element from something you're going to work with, because in a literal sense, if you truly banished it, it would sort of dissolve into nothing and there'd be nothing there. So what you're doing is you're purifying and clarifying the element that's there and getting rid of any negative energies associated with that element and the history of the object. And so you draw the pentagram and you sort of push it through the object. And you want to do at least all four of the pentagrams, if not the fifth one. Because the spirit one is sort of optional, I think. It depends on how you're feeling. But that is a nice tool to have available to use, because then you don't need to have water, you don't need to have fire, you don't need to have salt. You don't need to have any other physical representation of the element if you draw the pentagram and then you use that to like go through and cleanse the object of any negative associations with that element. And the more you practice that particular kind of technique, the stronger it becomes, the better it works. But, looking at our attitudes is probably one of the good things that we can do if we can see where there's places where we have an automatic assumption about something that it will or will not work because of this or that. It's good to look at what are the reasons behind that, and is that valid? Is that true? Does it have to stay true? It was true up until now, but does that mean you have to continue to embrace it? And so, I sort of, in the beginning, when they started coming out with labels, considered myself more like a kitchen witch than a ceremonialist, because if I need something to be sacred and a power object in the moment, I can take it out of the kitchen cupboard and use it, and it becomes whatever it is I need, because it's my need that determines its power in those situations. Like the story about the ley line that I healed, and then the knife that I had to find and had to get rid of, and so forth, which is too long to go into in this particular video, but you can watch that one, and that one was the one about Big Sur and the healing a ley line, I guess. And so really, to be a good magical person, thinking on your feet and paying attention and being in the moment are your greatest assets, and not coloring yourself into a corner that you can't do this and you can't do that unless these certain things are met. It's freeing when you have that kind of an attitude. So, that's going to depend on your personality, where you're at, somewhat what you've been exposed to in the beginning and what you've adopted. But like I said, it's always good to know what those are, and then you can make a conscious choice to decide to keep them or to change them. Because in the end, everything we believe is something that we've adopted, something someone else has told us about how reality works, or something we have decided based on information from our personal experience. And if we have a series of negative experiences telling us that life works in a bad way, then it takes a conscious effort to change our attitude towards having experiences and to prove that the opposite is also true, that it doesn't have to be negative, it can be positive. And so, looking and sort of training our brain to allow the attraction of positive input, positive energy to whatever it is that we're doing. Not that we don't have bad days. I was cranky yesterday myself. Not sure exactly why I was cranky, but I was definitely kind of cranky. And we're not perfect. It's okay to have whatever feelings you have, and feelings aren't rational or logical. That's why they're feelings. Emotions and feelings are not rational and logical. They're kind of the opposite of that. And trying to force them into some kind of a form that works for someone else never seems to work very well for the person who's having the experience and having the feeling. So I'm into accepting whatever my feelings are and then decide what I want to do with them, if I want to do something with them or not. And yesterday I just let myself be cranky and noticed later that I was cranky. I'm like, well, I'm not cranky today, so okay, that's fine. But the making the objects that you buy that are mass produced, individual and personal, is the way to change the relationship with the object. I mean, I've got all kinds of things I haven't shown you that are sitting around here. Like I bought a statue of a dragon and I repainted it. I painted it red and gold to put on my altar. I have a peacock over there that was just sort of this weird brass glass color, and I made it look more like a peacock. I have a fountain that I found that I put on my west altar that I painted in colors of blues and things like that because I wanted it to represent water. I have a candle holder my son gave me that's this fairy, and so I painted it to, give her flowers and color her up and put pinks and stuff on her and blues and greens and everything else to sort of give her more energy for holding our candles. And I even picked up a brass peacock sort of that was fanned out like this. I wanted it for my west altar in my room for working with the water element, and I painted the whole thing with the colors of the peacock's tail and stuff in it, which took some time. And that's the thing, is like putting in time and effort and attention into something that you're going to work with makes it more powerful and meaningful to whatever you do with it later, because you've added that you attention to the object. So these are just some ideas of things that you can find and things that you can paint and ways that you can paint them and so forth, just to give you a notion of some of the things I have lying around, I guess. um, and just sort of broaden your horizons as far as what you might find. And that's the thing, is like keeping your eye out and looking at things slightly differently and going like, hey, that reminds me of this element or this god or that goddess, or whatever. So I decided today would be the show and tell episode. Someone asked me to show the statue of Aurora that I painted, because she also has Aurora as her goddess. And so I hope that was fun to see some ideas. And like I said, you don't have to spend much money on the paint either. You can just, look and see what's around, and a nice way to spend an evening. You're just sort of hanging out. So I guess that's it for this video. And tomorrow is Ostara. So I hope you all have a wonderful Ostara. You probably won't see this till tomorrow or something anyway. And I'll see you guys on Sunday. So have a great one. This is Siofra's Magic Alcove, and this has been Siofra Bradigan.